This is Sports Jam. I'm Doug Doyle. Legendary sports journalist and author Jerry Izenberg returns to the show to talk about his latest book, Baseball, Nazis, and Nedick's Hot Dogs, Growing Up Jewish in the 1930s in Newark. Great to see you again, Jerry.
Always good to be here.
As a member of many halls of fame, you've been inducted into the International Jewish Sports Hall of Fame in 2016. And I would imagine, based on this latest book, that really meant a lot to you.
It did, because actually, 26 countries voted. They're in Netanya, Israel. They're not here. And I think my dad would have liked that if he had been around. I'm in 17 halls of fame, and it doesn't impress me that much. Well, we'll sell some tickets, put them on the program. I don't kid myself. But there are a few that mean a lot to me. One is the Red Smith Award, which I consider Hall of Fame, and the Jewish Hall of Fame. They even named an award after me now. There's a group called the Basketball Reunion, and they do a nice job. They're on the day of the Final Four, and they give out awards in the morning to Jersey people. And then they all sit on the Prudential floor with little cafe tables. They eat and they watch the Final Four. So when they call me up to tell me, we're giving you this award, but we want you to give it to somebody else, I said, I'm not quite understanding what you're saying. I mean, you can have it if you want it. I mean, the awards, they don't mean, when we moved from New Jersey, by actual count, we threw out 52 plaques. So, we're never going to run out of stuff. Anyway, I used to start fireplaces with him. So anyway, they said, no, we're naming the award in your honor, but we'd like you to give it. And I said, well, if we can give it to a woman, that would be nice. And we did. And the name of the award, when I went on to acknowledge that, on a speaker on the Zoom in Newark, because I'm in Nevada. And I said, I want to thank you, people. It really means a lot to me because you didn't name it the Jerry Izenberg Memorial.
No, you're going strong. And you know what? You probably already know this, but I am a great lover of history. And reading this book, wow, what a wonderful story. First of all, the prologue had me in stitches. It's why I'm wearing the Yogi Berra hat, because you mentioned Yogi. I'm not going to take anything away. You have to read the prologue to enjoy how to start this book. But, you already talked about, before we started this interview, the relationship that you had with your dad. And I got to tell you, it brought me to tears in some ways, Jerry, because playing and talking baseball with my dad brought back so many memories. Reading this book about my dad, Spike, who was a terrific catcher, and your dad, Harry, was a really good second baseman who played in the minor leagues. And you prompted these old memories about using neat's foot oil to put on the leather in your baseball glove and to break it in. And that's exactly what we did. So I just loved reading this book. The relationship in those early years that you had with your dad are so powerful. Can you talk about, you mentioned it so much in this book, but what was the moment when you were first playing baseball and talking baseball with dad that just makes you smile?
There is such a moment. First of all, I had a bar. He had gloves. He had a catcher's mitt for some reason. He had a fielder's glove in the. Well, we didn't have it in basement. We had a cellar, but he kept them down there. And I would use the fielder's glove, but he wouldn't buy me a glove. He said, you have to earn it first. Then one day he decides, my father was sort of spontaneous about things. He decides, you're getting a glove today. Well, it happened to be December. There was a freaking blizzard going on. Newark used to have great snowfalls. And my mother walks in and she sees me all bundled up in the living room with a muffler and everything like that. And she says, what's going on with him? And my father said, we're going out. He said, out? You Miss Sugar, out today? What's wrong with you? Look at the weather. He said, we have very important business. And out we went. We walked to the corner, which was Clinton Avenue. And In those days, all the buses had these big snow chains on them. They didn't have snow tires.
I remember that.
And the cement was so hard, they would break constantly. So you could hear the thing slapping, boom, 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 before you saw the bus. That's how we knew the bus was coming. There's so much snow, or you couldn't see. The bus comes, we get out, we go downtown Newark to a place called the biggest sporting goods store. We go to the front door. And first of all, there's a lot of Newark Bears. That was my team. His team was the Giants. But the Bears were AAA, owned by the Yankees. My father hated the Yankees, owned by the Yankees. And they were voted in the year 2001 the greatest minor league franchise in America history ever. And that was the first team I saw. They won the pennant by 25 and a half games. And it was 1937. And I was just a lot of memories. And I would follow them and he would follow the Giants, but I was sort of mandated to follow the Giants. If you follow the Giants, you have to understand. I know my father followed them because he wanted to play for them. He was never good enough.
Good hit, right? But not a good fielder.
Yeah, yeah, oh yeah. And the thing about it, yeah, when he tried me out hitting, I was about 10 or 11, and he shook his head. He said, maybe you should try left-handed. He moved me around the other side of the thing. I was worse left-handed. So he said, well, just enjoy the game. I'll teach you how to score. So we go down there and we walk in the North Bear display and everything. And there's a big, big wire basket in the middle of the floor with gloves in them. My father said, because it was right there to go. Smells the gloves. I don't know what that would do. By the way, hits him glove. Now puts it back anyway. He finally picks an old tan glove. And these weren't the bushel baskets these guys play with today. They fit. So he says, this is the one. This is the one you're going to get. At the bottom of the glove was the autograph, Jimmy Gleason, who had been the left fielder for the Newark Bears. I figure, I get the glove. I'm Jimmy Gleason. No, well, nobody's going to be able to stop me now. So we go out, we get on a bus, and he says, now look, we're not going to play today. Well, the snow is over the top of the bus. He said, we're not going to play anything. You're going to go home. You're going to go down to the basement, get the neat foot oil. We're going to soak the glove in it. Get a baseball. I'll give you a baseball. We'll put it in there. You go get a belt. Take one of my belts and tie it around. And we leave it there. We don't touch it until the spring, and you'll have a natural pocket. And I'm looking at my father, and he realizes, I'm breaking this kid's heart. He's got a glove. How can I? He says, come on, hell with it. Let's go. And we're out in the driveway, no coach. The snow is up to our waist. He's coming down and coming down. Bang, bang, bang on the window. Jerry Izenberg is yelling, McCrimmers, you're going to get killed. You're going to have pneumonia. You're going to die on me. And get in the house. Get in the house. That's my only boy. Get in the house. My father says to me, I can't seem to hear her. Now I'm in a conspiracy, right? 8 years old or 10 years old. And I say, I can't hear her either. He says, okay, we're going to test this glove. He throws the ball as high as he can. He says, okay, Jimmy Gleason, show me what you got. Top of the ninth inning. Bears ahead 3-2. Bases loaded, and you got to catch this ball. Well, the Newark Bears are depending on me. I got to get that ball. We lose the International League pennant. I'm staggering around like this, up and down. The snow is so heavy, I can't figure, where's the ball? Am I going after a snowflake? Somehow I stick my hands up, ball lands in it. And I'll never forget it. I got the ball, I look at him, and the smile on his face told me he had just given me the first major gift in my life.
These are the kind of stories that you will hear and see when you pick up a copy of Baseball, Nazis, and Nedick's Hot Dogs, Growing Up Jewish in the 1930s in Newark, Jerry Izenberg's latest book. Now, your dad actually, I'm a Pirates fan, so when I read this, actually carried the great Hannes Wagner's glove for him to Federal League Park in Patterson. Yeah. How'd that work out?
Well, he was from Patterson, and he didn't come to Newark until he was wounded in World War One, and he got a little blood money when he got ushered out. Patterson had been the silk capital of America They were like 20 mills. Well, the unions came in while he was away, and the owners saw the unions, and they started moving their factories down south where there was a right to work, no unions, and that's when he buys a very small factory that makes, they call them blocks, they're spools. And the silk would go on the spool, and they discard them after they ran out. And when my father was about, I guess, 10 or 11 years old, yeah, he came here when he was 8 from Lithuania. He had a little red wagon. Everybody had a little red wagon in those days. And he went to go gather up these discarded spools and would go to a mill that would reuse them. And he'd get 50 cents for a wagon load. And in those days, my father came here in 1882. A family could eat for 2 days on that 50 cents, 75 cents, because most of them didn't have it. Anyway, that's how he bought this factory. His business acumen was not very good. First thing he does is he hires all his brothers. And two of them wanted to work and the others just wanted payday. And that's why he left Patterson, because one brother, Charlie, threw a wrench at him during an argument. And he said, I don't want this place. I don't want you. I don't want anything to do with this. He moved to Newark. And years later, 25 years, no, not that long, but I was at least 15. I was 15 years old, so maybe about 18 years. He gets a phone call because the brothers stayed there and ran the factory. And they said, Harry, we got a bid. They want to tear it down and make houses, whatever they want to make. And my father said, go ahead, go ahead. He said, well, we're going to give you your share. My father said, I don't want my share. I didn't work there. Sadie Izenberg had ears like radar. I don't know how she heard the other end of the conversation, but she did it. And she stands here with her arms folded. You're taking the bread and butter out of our children's mouths. Well, I don't know what the hell it was worth. Not very much. Nobody was making blocks anymore. And my father just got mad. And it was funny because she could cry at the drop of a hat. We used to have, in those days, I remember interviewing a guy in Chicago at the Giants Bears championship game, who was a professional crier. I didn't always stick to the subject. He would rent himself out to go to wakes and to go to funerals. And my mother could have done that. And my father said to her one day, that's enough. Turn off the waterworks. And she said, I'm so upset. I can't. He said, okay, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do when you die. I'm going to take your body and the bodies of all your sisters, and I'm sending them to the Smithsonian Institution because they're the only humans that ever had their bladders behind their eyeballs.
Now, this memoir is filled with these wonderful memories from Jerry Izenberg. And, one of the threads that came through this book that really hit me was the radio, the Philco radio, and all the radio sports broadcasts that you listened together. I guess that there is a love for you with radio and a relationship with radio.
Oh, very much. Radio is so much better. First of all, I don't like television because people are always helping me. I don't need some former athlete to tell me how in 1949 he was playing in Pittsburgh and this happened. I want to know what's going on in the game. I want to see the game, but I don't need him to tell me what's going on in the game. I know the game. One of the things about Chris Schenkel, who was an announcer of some prominence, why I liked him, he was not a colorful guy. He didn't make funny stories, but I liked him because he knew how to do football. Here's the way he would do football in 1956. He'd say, single wing. Conley's got the ball. He throws it. Vogt catches on the 12. First down. That's all you need. You don't need all the filler. See, radio needed the filler. You know it better than anybody. I used to have a radio show a long time ago. And dead air is that's how I learned how I never listened to the Yankees. So that's how I learned how every National League park looked. I saw the ivy through the eyes of the announcer in Wrigley Field before I ever saw Wrigley Field. I saw the old laundry behind left field in Crosby Stadium in Cincinnati because they told me Ernie Lombardi was hitting home runs onto the roof of that thing. And I knew, for example, in Cincinnati, in those days, and I'm talking about what, 1940, 1938, most of the concessions were German food. They had a big German American population. But I mean, I learned so much listening to these guys because they were ingenious at it. And you know where they really were good? The stations would never send them on the road. And they'd sit there with a drumstick and a block of wood. Boom. Line drive, left field. But they were getting a wire, the telegraph stuff. But they had phony announcements, right? Whoever left their lights on, their license plate, you better move, you better get out there and turn around. They did the whole, you swore you were in the park. They were 1,000 miles away. Remember, in those days, the furthest west franchise was St. Louis. We traveled, and when I got into business, it was the furthest west franchise. And we traveled by train. That's how we got to know the players. Because in those days, the players made more money than we did. I mean, the dog catcher made more money than we did. But they didn't make that much more. We played cards. We ate together in the diner. You know, that all disappeared. When they became billionaires, we became ink-stained wretches, and the rapport was not as good. I had some pretty good rapport with some guys, but I took the trouble to find out what they were all about, you know, and that made a big difference. Allie was my close friend. I say one of my 5 closest friends for 50 years.
And that's why you've written so many great boxing articles.
Well, you know, he was, yeah, that's true, but well, I don't like to judge what everybody.
I'll judge it for you. How about that?
Well, I'll take it. If that's the way you're gonna judge it, I'll take it. You know, my father was, I got to tell you another story about my father. My father I can't remember him yelling at me only once. And I lived in that house till I was 21 and left to go to Korea. And he hit me exactly twice in my whole life. First time was a frame up. My big sister ran in and said, he hit me. Bam. Now I'm on the floor and I'm saying, I don't know why, but I'm laying down here. I ain't arguing until I find out what's on his mind. But he had a thing he told me. You see, you got to understand the beauty of Newark. That's why I love Newark. I'm an exile in Nevada. I love Newark so much. I really did. You know, I wrote a novel, and it was about the big riot in Newark, and it was about the tension between the blacks and the Italians because they were fighting for the political control of the city. And it was also about the mafia because I knew a lot of those guys that I was into at their headquarters. The old Gambino crowd, they had a fake Chinese restaurant was their headquarters called the White Kai. And the walls, to help me, were decorated in maroon velour. They hung them from there. And these fake autographs, and these fake whatever, were pinned to them, you know, artifacts. And I remember describing it in the novel, saying the decorator outdid himself. He did the place in early Gavone, and that's what it was. The other guys, I forget it was. What's his name? Richie the Boot Biardo. They were a little bit more upgrade because they had most of New Jersey. The Gambinos were just trying to get some of it.
I want to get to this part in this book where you and I spoke briefly before we started this interview. You lived in a neighborhood that was extremely close, the borderline between the Jewish neighborhood.
About 12 blocks, something like that.
Yeah. Tell us about how you were impacted by Nazi-related propaganda basically right next door.
Well, I had to be. First of all, my father made sure I was impacted by it. My father, we had the supper table. There were 2 approved subjects baseball, and the German-American Bund and Hitler. And if you wanted to talk about anything else that night, you had to get his permission. He wouldn't have it. And one night he made an exception. We could talk about boxing because Lewis was going to fight Schmeling that night and that. And of course, he bought all the myths because he didn't know. When I went out into business, I understood. I knew both guys, Lewis and Schmeling. Schmeling was not a Nazi. He was punished for that. Lewis didn't fight him like Franklin Roosevelt said to defend America. He fought him because the guy knocked him out. The only guy beat him and he knocked him out. And that's what it was all about. But what happened, and again, my father pointed it out, the day of the fight, it was a late morning, the Daily News had most newspapers put out extras. If you had a real big news story. That morning, the FBI arrested 22, not Germans, 22 German Americans as spies for Hitler. Took them off the street. That was the prelude to Louis Schmeling that later that night. And the Bund from Yorkville came in, and the Bund from Irvington came in, and the Jewish guys working on the garment center, they were there. I mean, it was, I was, if I knew enough and I was older, I would be waiting for the real fight to break out. And with this attitude, my father, I was 8 years old, just like I was in that picture. My sister was 10. We were the only kids, I think, in New Jersey who knew what the Reichstag was, what it did, and who burned it. That was Hitler. Because my father just insisted that we do that. They had a big rally in Madison Square Garden, close to 20,000 people. Larger than life pictures of George Washington and Adolf Hitler on the stage. 12,000 of these Nazi worshippers, because it was a cult. 12,000 of them were in stormtrooper uniforms. It was just incredible. And that's why the cover came about, because we're walking out of a theater. Behind us, you see the marquee of a theater. It was the Newsreel Theater. I was 8 years old. The picture's 84 years old. My father insisted I go with him on a Saturday morning because it had to read the films of the German-American Bund rally from before. Now he's coming out of the theater and he's mad. He's mad all over again. He was wounded in World War I, remember. He gets out the door and he says to me, "Those mumsers," which in Yiddish means bastard. "Those mumsers. I helped stop them in 1917. Somebody's got to stop them now." I'm an 8-year-old kid. I say to my father, "But they're in Germany." He says, "No, they're here." And I think felt he went a little too far. I was looking around the corner, where are they? And he said to me, "Okay, how about some lunch? How about a Nedick hot dog?" And I say, "Only if I get an orange drink." That was the story of the cover of the book and the name of the book.
Wonderful stories from Jerry Izenberg, but emotional stories. So I'm wondering if Dad was able to reappear and see all the wonderful honors that his son has done. And maybe, he didn't play for any Major League Baseball team and wasn't necessarily a radio star. He was a great sports writer. What would you want to say to Dad? And we have about 10 minutes left in the show. What would you want to say to Dad if he showed up today and said, "Hi, son"?
Well, I would keep in my mind, I was working in New York when I was in high school. I rode the commuter train. And my sister was thrilled because there were two tabloids, the News and the Mirror. And all the business people would pull the tabloid and put in there. I had to wear a sport jacket at the job. So I'm come home and she'd see me coming down the street. Look, he said, like a grown-up, he's got that thing in his. And my father said, "Hey, come here. That newspaper got wrapped up. I think you get more benefit out of it if you stopped and read it." He didn't throw around a lot of compliments. He just expected things, and not in a dictatorial way. I'm raising him right. This is the way he's going. I'll tell you what he said to me just before he died. Not the week or anything like that, but He was dying. He knew it, and we knew it, but he wasn't in his bed. I went over to see him. He lived across the street, and I said to me, "Come in the bedroom, open my closet door." I open it up. He says, "What do you see?" I said, "Sport jacket and two pairs of pants, some shoes, a couple of shirts, not much." He says, "Nah, that's right." Walks over, puts his arm around me and says, "Now you know. I have nothing to leave you except our good name. Don't screw it up." And I never forgot that. And I always tried not to screw it up. Only he didn't say screw.
And you didn't
Well, I
mess
hope
it
not.
up.
It's
No,
nice that you feel that
you
way.
didn't. We only have about 8 minutes left in the show. So real quickly, I wanted to throw out just a couple of names and just give me a couple of sentences. Bob Seeds.
Oh, Bob Seeds was my hero and my father's disappointment because his nickname was Suitcase Seeds. He was traded so many times. He spent about 13 years in the minors, but he played for 5 major league teams. And he played for the Giants twice. That he was a guest at our dinner table, according to my father, right? And I think I was 11 years old, maybe 12. And Bob Seeds is playing for the Newark Bears. And I'm listening on the radio when I come home from school at the end of the day. They're playing the Buffalo Bisons, who they weren't very good. And so there was like crowd noise. There were seat was half empty. And Seeds comes up, hits a home run. He comes up again, hits another home run. Comes up, he's got 3 straight home runs. And he hits 4. And now he's coming up a 5th time. And a guy named Henry Adam Fink is brought in to pitch to him. And Henry Adam Fink, he may not have been a major leaguer, but he was no dummy. This guy is not going to hit a 5th straight home run off me if I have to throw the ball to Cincinnati. And he starts trying to throw the ball to Cincinnati. The manager was, his name was O'Neill. He later managed the Detroit Tigers. He's standing on the top step of the dugout, Buffalo dugout, and he hollers, "Hey, Finky, give him something to hit." I think in that moment figured the third ball wasn't going to go to Cincinnati. It was going to go right off the manager's skull. He was so determined to get his 5th home run. He steps across the plate, which means he's out, except the umpire is so passionate, he didn't call him out. He reaches out, he hits a line drive that hits him in a place where he could have been a male soprano the rest of his life. He got a single out of it. That's the first day. The next day, he hits 3 more home runs. He drives in something like 16, 17 runs in 2 games. And he's hitting well, 300, well over 300. And about a month ago, the Yankees sell him to the Giants because they can get a price. And my father's thinking, we're going to win a pennant now. Finally, we're going to win a damn pennant. You have to understand my father's attitude. If he were in the Bible, he'd be Job. Send those plagues in. Go ahead. Throw me in the river. I don't care because I have faith in you. We're going to win a World Series. His last World Series was 37 or 38 when they played. 37 when they won. They beat the Senators. They didn't win a World Series till 1954. And that's how I break down the Giant fans in New York. Number one, the Yankees. They were all stockbrokers rooted for them. That's what my father told me. He'd been like the winner. The Dodgers, they were all maniacs. And the Giant fans, they were Joe because they were going to get a World Series somehow. And I'll never forget the day he took me my first trip to the Polo Grounds. And you come out of the subway and you can see a crack of light. And you're going up the stairs and you're seeing more light, more light. And then you see it, the Polo Grounds. I expected to hear organ music in the background at that time. I'd never seen it. We go there, the Dodgers are in town. They had 32,000 seats over in Brooklyn. We had 50,000 with the Giants. Every time they played the Giants, all of Brooklyn came over because they could get inside the ballpark. They could get tickets. We get there a little late, And the guy at the ticket window says to my father, I only got standing room and you got a kid there. I don't think you want that. He said, yeah, I want that. I want that. So now we're walking up this maze of ramps. We don't go very far. And he said, right there, stand right there by the railing. That's going to be our place. I said, Dad, I can't see anything but the pitcher's mound. He said, that's all you need to see today. Carl Hubble is pitching. Great. He's the guy who struck out the 5 greatest hitters in the American League in succession in the first All-Star game. His arm is dead. He's only going to play one more year, and he only gets 8 decisions that year. Everybody knows thinks he's not coming back even. He's pitching with his brain, and he's got 3 brilliant innings, and in the 4th inning, bang, boom, crash. Here comes Mellon to take him out, the manager to take him out of the game. They're walking to the dugout. All of a sudden, close to 50,000 people are on their feet screaming in tribute. And I realized something after that. More than half of them were Dodger fans. That taught me what my father was trying to teach me about baseball.
Jerry Izenberg out with his memoir, and it is a great one. Baseball Nazis and Nedick's hot dogs, growing up Jewish in the 1930s in Newark. What an incredible memory you have. Thanks for joining us on Sports Jam.
Pleasure to be here always.
Sports Jam is a WBGO Studios production. You can check out all the past shows, including the one with Jerry Izenberg, at wbgo.org/sportsjam. Or find Sports Jam with Doug Doyle on the NPR list of podcasts or wherever you hear podcasts. Jerry's memoir, Baseball Nazis and Nedick's Hot Dogs, Growing Up Jewish in the 1930s in Newark, is now available in bookstores and online everywhere. Until our next Sports Jam session, I'll see you at the game.